Evening, good morning, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Variety Sports Network, a special festive show. It's the awards season from football from across the pond. Seemed festively appropriate to jump in. You know, week 16 just about to kick off. We're almost at the end. Some teams' games and seasons are over. Some teams kind of still hanging on there, Craig, almost. Still got a chance, still hanging in there. Other teams getting ready for the playoffs. Others, looking at wrapping up some of their players in Cotton Wool for the next couple of weeks. And it seemed an appropriate time to kind of start talking about some of these awards and those games of the year, coaches of the year, rookie of the year sort of awards that always fly around at this sort of time. Thought it would be appropriate to kind of have your thoughts on it. Sam, how you're thinking about things. And Craig, I appreciate you jumping in, and I'm sure you've got some thoughts on who you think should get some of the things. So where do we start? Do we start with the big one, or do we save the big one to the end? What do you reckon?
Big one to the end always.
Big one. Lead into the big one. So the MVP right to the end.
People waiting.
Keep them hanging on for it. Okay, then let's start with this one. Just mentioned before we jumped on air and just went live is obviously it could be quite interesting because I don't know how we're going to work this on. I've got Johnny's one. He's mailed in, typical Giants fan, mailing it in. Hope your wife's having a great birthday, by the way, Johnny. Happy birthday, Mrs. J. He's sent it his, and obviously I was just saying it'd be interesting to see if we actually do reach a consensus on here, or whether or not we'll end up with 4 completely separate names and just kind of hang it out there in the universe and see what happens. Shall we start with Coach of the Year then?
Yeah.
Seems an appropriate one to start with. Craig, I'll give you the floor to talk us up your Coach of the Year nomination.
To be honest with you, Gary, this is the one I was least looking forward to because I have 2 names written down and they're both from my division. So, I
was wondering if you were going to be the bigger man on this front.
If you're looking for Coach of the Year, you have to look at Dan Campbell. You have to look at Kevin O'Connell. I mean, Dan Campbell, what he's done at the Detroit Lions has been nothing short of phenomenal, and we all seen it in Hard Knocks, but, you think it's that just for the show. The Lions have showed this year it wasn't. That is how he coaches. That is how they're going to play. And the players want to play for him. They've got a good chance of getting into playoffs now, and I think he's done a grand job. And for Kevin O'Connell, I mean, I know we all call the Vikings the worst 10-3 team or whatever, 11-3 team, whatever they are, and they probably are, but they keep winning these close games. And
they are 11-3, aren't they? I mean, that's
coach's calls. The coach makes the right calls at the big moments to get them over the line and win the games. So for me, you can't have a conversation without his name being in it.
Interesting. Because I mean, you do wonder whether Dan Campbell, in the grand scheme of things, will get the popular vote from the Hard Knocks and all of that sort of thing. Do you think he'll score higher because of Hard Knocks, or just, as you say, what he's actually coached and what he's done with the Detroit Lions is amazing, but will he get more of the vote because people are like, I saw that guy on TV and hence I'll vote for him? I know most of the fans don't really get the option on this. It's more, these ones are kind of dealt with in terms of players and kind of internal NFL stuff, which is kind of a bonus because I don't know if you've just seen the Pro Bowl vote that's come out, which is basically a popularity contest on who's got the biggest Twitter following. So, I mean, at least these ones don't have that. Sam, how do you think about Coach of the Year? Because obviously we've got 2 names there. Interesting enough, just before you dive in, Johnny has left in, he's come in with Dan Campbell, but he's caveated it with saying Dan Campbell if they make the playoffs, if not Shanahan. It's like, interesting.
I'm
not sure.
I've agreed with Johnny on Campbell in the sense of if they make the playoffs, the turnaround from when you look at when he took them over to where he has them now within within a year, we'll say.
Even what he's done this year, Sam, 1-6 they started 1-6.
1-6. They're 6-1 now, wasn't they? 7-1 now. So
he kept them going.
I think the one thing that for me, the reason why Campbell was sort of in the picture for me in terms, because I've written down 3 names, but Campbell sort of, this one was the one that was more jumping out at me. But I think not only is it about what he's done for the Lions in terms of turning their season around this year, where they were last year compared to this year. It's the fact that he has a team that just will basically live and die for him, which I think to have that ethic within your franchise is to have that at all is just absolutely fantastic. But also his ballsy decisions that he makes in terms of, when he was on was it fourth and
6 with a 20
and he just
punt,
decided
just
fake
why not?
punt, and you just think he makes such bold decisions, and you just think for a coach to be making those decisions and for them to be working is just, I think it just works really, really well. And they seem to, I mean, I watched Goff for 2-3 years. He's not
a different player, right?
He's a different player. He's played well for the Lions, but I still don't think that the Lions will get any better along the line with Goff there. I think if you really hone in on what Goff is about, he is so slow in the pocket in terms of progression thought and that. So for me, for Campbell to be able to work that team the way that he does, yes, the defense has been shaky at times, but again, last few games they've been unbelievable. So the way he's turning the franchise around as a whole, I think is just really, really good. The other two names that I've got both come from the NFC. So I've gone with Sirianni, which I think is a pretty standard one. And obviously the Eagles are
flying high, best record in the league. He's got to be in the conversation because of that, at least, if nothing else. Yeah.
And my final one, which I think that Johnny will be happy with, is Brian Daboll or Daboll, whatever you pronounce it. I think again, it's what he's actually done with that Giants team. When you think of the utter shambles that is the wide receiver core that's there, I mean, and to be honest, I mean, people were questioning Daniel Jones. I just think they brought in some great players, especially on defense. And I just think, obviously, having Barkley back fit, I just think he's done a good job, and he's done a lot better. When we were talking, I mean, I think was it after
the beginning of the season, 5 weeks, Johnny was like, "This is it, we're done, we've finished for the year almost." Yeah.
And you just think what he's done. So those are sort of my three. But I think Campbell will be my choice if the Lions make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think if you're tagging that caveat on Campbell, should that caveat not also be tagged on Daboll?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You're in that situation, and Daboll was on my list. But interesting, a couple of mine coming out of the AFC. I think Mike McDaniel in his first year at Miami has kind of unlocked Tua. He's unlocked, an offense that's scary at times. Yes, they're kind of hanging on in the last couple of weeks, and this will be a good test this week. There's a big game this week against you lot, isn't it, Johnny?
Yes, that's against us. Yes, very much so. It's
so,
we exit stage right.
And it'll be a big week for McDaniels if he can turn around the sort of blip and get them back to firing and everything else. I think he's done an amazing job down there. Salah, obviously, there's a bit of an ex-49er slant to some of the people that I'm looking at, and can't help myself as the bias is there. But the Jets, making the Jets relevant still to be late December. Some of the games that the Jets are playing are still relevant, still playoff bound near enough. For a Jets team which has been absolutely horrendous for however long, to have them in the mix. Doug Peterson down at Jaguars. I know it's not really taken off, but he's had to have a complete clean sweep in Duval. He's had to get rid of everything and start from literally scratch, and it's taken a while. But Lawrence looks okay now. He's starting to unlock that number one pick. So that would be an interesting one against the Jets this week. And I hate to say it, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but Pete Carroll's got to be in the mix with what he's done with a hideously rebuilding Seattle team to keep them relevant and to have they're still in it. They're still got a chance. I hate saying it.
I do agree with you. He was at the back of my mind, Pete Carroll. I think had Gino and had they basically not had this little bit of a blip where they're starting to get found out, I think he would definitely be in the picture. But I just think that, again, maybe it's another one of those. If they make the playoffs,
if they make it, maybe.
I think we have a lot of these sort of, especially head coaches this year. I think we have a lot where if they make the playoffs, they stand a real chance of being in the head coach of the year.
Which is a real shame when you consider what some of these coaches have done to really bad teams. You know, some of these teams that we just talked about, they're bad teams. They were bad teams before they didn't debut. The Giants were bad. The Dolphins weren't great. Jets were bad. You know, the Vikings were, right? And the Lions were bad, but now they're not. But we're tagging them with, you know, as you say, Sirianni will probably get it if the Eagles get to the championship game, or Andy Reid will get it if they end up winning. Kansas win the whole, and it's a bit of it almost feels a bit lazy for that to go that way. But I think some of the names that we've talked about here, I think need to be recognised for the job that they've done. But yeah, unfortunately, I think they will be, if they make the playoffs, they'll get more of a chance of a vote.
I mean, that to be fair, that is kind of fair as well, though, in the grander scheme of things, because you have to remember that these they've done great jobs with teams who have been awful, but they've done it with some very early draft picks, you know, and some, you know,
the system's kind of working, right? Yeah,
and it's you know, so they're supposed to bounce back, you know, and with the team, with the likes of the Lions and the Jets, you know, teams that are chronically bad, they've had so many early draft picks, you know, that they've got to get it right at some point, and kind of that might be a part of it as well. You know, Miami's had a lot of early draft picks, you know, they've picked up. I mean, they've done well who they got, and, you know,
done well with the trading stuff, but is that the front office or is that the coaching? And again, it's like that, isn't it? Is the Jets, you know, the Jets are flying high, but you've got, like, as you say, they're stacked with first and second round draft picks for the last 10 years or whatever it is. So, of course, they're going to eventually come good. And the same with the Lions and stuff like that. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting one. So, yeah, so are we picking Dan Campbell in? Is that going to be our consensus nomination?
We've all mentioned Dan Campbell, and I think you know, if we were going to go for the obvious, it would be, you know, your Sirianni or something like that. But I just think what Dan Campbell has done for that Lions team is just it's worth a massive recognition and worthiness of you know, being seen as coach of the year, I think.
Yeah, for me, it's Dan Campbell, even if they don't make the playoffs, just for what he's done and what he's done to the team. But not just that as well. You've got all of these young kids in, and you start 1-6. You know, 1-6. That must have been devastating. You know, they must have been.
That must have been at some point just going, this isn't working. To keep them doing it.
And the thing was, it was 1-6, and they weren't playing bad.
No,
that's 1-6 by losing games by 3 points or 5 points and stuff, haven't they? They've not, their points differential considering is not like they weren't a 1-6 team. They were still scoring 30 odd points a game.
I mean, a little bit of luck one way, a little bit of luck the other way, and you know, they could be they could be sitting here talking about them as the worst 11-3 team I've ever seen. You know, type thing. It has been that close for them. So yeah, even if they don't make the playoffs, Dan Campbell for me.
Miranda. Dan Campbell is our Variety Sports football from across the pond nominee for Coach of the Year. Please don't come back and haunt us at the end of the season. Where do we go next? Do you want to go Game of the Year? This is an interesting sort of nuanced one. Game of the Year. Do we want to start with the blowout first Thursday night game where the Bills came to the Rams, smashed them? Do we want to go the shootout Bills Chiefs, or really is everybody just going, the best comeback in NFL history, hands down, has to be Game of the Year, no matter what happens, right? It's
only one I've written down.
It's I mean, there have been some high-scoring, stonking games. There's been some shockers as well, but
there's been some great games, yeah. But
you can't argue that 33-0 up,
33-0,
36-33. I mean, yes, Matty Ryan's obviously paying for it because they're starting Nick Foles this time, which threw me completely. Nick Foles is now at the Colts, and it was like,
gentlemen, I've got some fantasy work to do. Hang on a minute.
just picking up Nick Foles on the cheap. Pick up Gardner Minshew while you're at it, mate. That's crazy. But yeah, it threw me that Nick Foles is something. But yeah, the game, it has to be that one. You can't.
I think the reason why I went with this one more than anything, not only was it the fact that it was obviously the greatest comeback or the biggest comeback. I'm
not sure greatest, but biggest comeback.
The biggest comeback in NFL history. It's the fact that majority of the points that the Colts scored were down to Vikings mistakes.
Yeah.
And to come back from that, to come from basically shooting yourself in the foot in the first half to then coming back, you know, getting
turning it
all those
around,
points,
stopping
some
all
of-
those mistakes, and
Yeah.
then getting more points back the other way.
And it was exciting to watch as well. It was just a very sort of exciting
It's just
game.
insane. Every time you saw a new update on the score, you were like, really? Really? Really?
Yeah.
Really? And you just know that people were like, wow, I can't believe that. And they were laughing at the beginning, and it's like, won't bother tuning in, that game's done. And you know that a load of people flicked back to watch that as they started to ramp up. It was like, oh, just an insane headline, an insane game. As you say, the turnaround from being just shockingly bad in the first half of just giving away point and, you know, blown coverage, whatever. It just, anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for that first half.
Yeah.
And you know, the Colts took advantage of it. I mean, they're not the Colts are the Colts, right? You know, if you give them any professional team will take those points.
That Colts defense, that first half, was the best I've seen the Colts defense in quite a long time. And
they went on holiday, didn't they?
Yeah.
They conceded 39 points and still scored 21 points in fantasy. That's how good they were in the first half, you know. 39 points conceded and they still scored more than 20 points.
Still score more than 20 points as a defense is just insane, isn't it? It's just absolutely. But as you say, it's like two different games almost. Like it was, you know, the defense for the Colts turned up and the Vikings were making every mistake possible. And then the second half, just the complete opposite. The defense couldn't do anything, and then the Vikings just flew off with it.
It's one of those where you actually wouldn't, if you were kind of watching, if you were listening to it and not watching it, it wouldn't surprise you if they swapped jerseys at half-time instead of full time.
If they just just change ends and you can play the other way this time. Yeah, swap over. Very bizarre.
It was such a big game.
Yeah, hands down, that's the game of the year. I can't imagine any other game will come close to that in the official sort of voting either.
Yeah.
All right then. Comeback player of the year.
Not Gino then.
Not Ryan Robinson.
I don't mind starting this one as quite the obvious. It's the obvious, but I also think personally it's the right pick. Christian McCaffrey.
That has to be.
I just think his, you know, to have essentially 2 years out. I mean, he was in and out, but it's almost 2 years out, and to come back and basically almost pick up from where he left off before he got that first injury. Obviously, he got the trade to the Niners, which I'm still bitter about.
I'm not.
He's also
we're unbeaten since we picked him up. I mean,
yeah,
we were 3-4 when we got him, and now we're 10-4. So it's like
his impact on your offense as well. I think even when he's not involved in the play, he's involved in the play, and I think you know if you're going to win the Super Bowl, it's going to be because of him. And that's
he may not, as you say, he may not be the one who does anything, or he might not make that play, but by being there, the defense's eyes are like, where's McCaffrey? Oh, Kittle's just run down the sideline, or Ayuk's got it, or XYZ. He has unlocked an awful lot from us, and you know he's got to be in the mix for that sort of comeback player of the year discussion because he's been in the wilderness, he's been injured, and I think he's still the leading rusher in Carolina, and he's left there 7 weeks ago.
And it is a genuine comeback as well, which is very important to me.
Yes. It meets the criteria of that. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking Saquon's got to be in the mix as well.
That's the other name I've got written down.
Yeah, because he's now
written down, but Saquon's the second one.
He's got to be in there because he's over 1,000-yard rushing. He's come back from a hideous injury. He's got to be in the mix. I mean, did he play last year, but he was coming back, or was he out last year? This is where
he was pretty much all out. I think maybe towards the end he featured a tiny bit, but he was out pretty much the whole season. This is where the comeback thing gets a bit iffy, doesn't it, Craig? And this is where wasn't he also out the previous year as well? He didn't play a lot the previous year.
I think he did the injury halfway through the previous year or something.
Yeah, he's not. He's missed a chunk of time, you know, and he's been kind of Mr. Irrelevant since his rookie year, really.
Since that blow-up year, yeah.
You know, this is kind of just him kicking, coming. So, his name has to be in the mix.
Mm-hmm. Geno Smith's name's in the mix. I'm come back from what though? Saquon's come back from a bad knee injury. McCaffrey's come back from bad injury. Geno's come back from being bench
a
player.
reserve.
reserve.
I
It's
think
not
you'd
a
be better giving
comeback,
him
is it?
rookie.
I think the reason
Most
why
improved.
I think he's I don't think comeback is the right terminology for someone who has basically spent majority of his career as a backup, and then gets this one chance. If anything, he should be opportunist of the year or something like that. Someone who's been given the opportunity and
taking it with both hands. Yeah, but
That's
yeah, I
the
don't
sort
think.
of player he is.
Well,
Yeah,
I tell you, if Gino's in the mix, then I've got one out of left field that should be in the mix as well. And again, he's one that's never really been away. But Jared Goff, if we're talking about Geno Smith, Jared Goff was absolutely ridiculed in LA. They celebrated when he got that big
I mean,
contract.
look what they shipped him off for. I mean, they're still paying for him in LA, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's still, but his contract was massive, and that's why they had to give up so much to get the Lions to take him. And it was, and he's came over to the Lions, and he was ridiculed at the Lions as well. And everyone was like, he's just there for the money, and they had to take him. They didn't want him, they had to take him. And he's done very well for that Lions team, not just this year, but last year as well. When they were okay, it was because of him. When St. Brown started taking off at the end of the season and started coming on a little bit of a game, it was because of him.
Because of Goff there, but I think, as you say, that's maybe more a season and a half. Whereas I think when they look at comeback player of the year just this year, don't they?
And he's not been away, so it's just a kind of. But if you're going to talk about Geno Smith, he's not been injured. He's not been, coming back from being effectively laughed out the game, and this is your swan song. To now, maybe leading the Lions into playoffs, and who knows from there,
Yeah, it's crazy, that one, isn't it? Johnny's got, interestingly enough, Derrick Henry.
Yeah, he is in the mix. He got injured halfway through last year, didn't he?
I mean, and the Titans fell off once he got injured last year. I mean, I remember, they were flying high, and he just went, and then they just lost all sense of direction. They didn't have anything without Derrick Henry. They are pretty much a one-trick pony, and they fell off the radar last year. So
he's kind of ran out of form now, though. This year he's the Titans have fallen off, and it's because he's out of form. That. So that kind of maybe a couple of weeks ago that I could have thrown his name in the mix, but
I've got that sort of situation with a few of the positions that we've got in the sense that they could have been in with it, but either due to an injury or loss of form, they've then obviously tailed off a bit. So yeah, I think this is probably going to be a recurring theme that some players that probably deserve to be in the mention a couple of weeks ago are now not because they've
just suddenly stopped. Yeah, but okay. So consensus seems to be who then? Who are we sticking on?
For me, it's McCaffrey.
For me, I think it's a no-brainer for McCaffrey, really, what he's done. And he has a genuine comeback. He has missed pretty much 2 solid years. 2 solid years
with injury, 2 solid seasons, completely changed. As we say, I think he made now, I think Hubbard may have just overtaken him in Carolina, but that was 7, 8 weeks ago. He left them. He's now taken over as the lead rusher in, the 49ers this season. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to complain. I think he should be it as well. So, there we go. Consensus is, sorry, Johnny, we're ignoring. We're not saying we're ignoring Derrick Henry, but no, he doesn't. He's outvoted. Christian McCaffrey is our comeback player of the year. So now we start to get interesting. Offensive rookie player of the year. Running back. How are we all feeling? I think it's going to be a running back.
I quite like Chris Olave at the Saints. I know that he's not been out of the park wonderful or anything like that, but anything that they've done when they have been good, it's because he's been bringing the ball in. He's got 100+ yard games. You can see,
even on a bad team, he's doing okay. Right?
And it's he's kind of that's exactly, on a bad team he's doing well, and for a wide receiver that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you've got quarterbacks thrown to you that Jameson Winston with a broken back, and then Andy Dalton. I think he's done very well.
Christian Watson.
Olave is another one of these where I think that last few games, he's now out injured for the next game.
Yeah,
he'll fall off. It's the fall off for me for Olave. He started the season so well, and he's always been. He's essentially had to be Saints wide receiver one, because
Yeah,
obviously
from day
all the
one
issues
almost,
with
yeah.
Thomas, Landry's been non-existent. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
he's had to step up, and he has stepped up. But like I say, last 3 weeks and now obviously out injured, I think he's fallen down the pecking order for me.
Yeah, he probably has.
Unfortunately, it might end up being a little bit out of sight, out of mind. As you say, he might have got early on. He's in front and centre, but if he's not playing and other rookies are playing and are starting to kind of grab the headlines a bit, and I think that's where Garrett Wilson is starting to come stronger on the betting lines and starting to get more talk about it because he's doing well later in the season. Although that might change, obviously, if Wilson's back under centre for the next couple of weeks, or how long Mike White's out, might change again because Wilson don't seem to connect anywhere near as much as Wilson and every DB that's on the pitch. So it'll be interesting to see if he keeps that high level. But again, I think we're also to say if Breece Hall had not got injured, he was walking away with Offensive Rookie of the Year, right?
Quite
100%.
easily.
Yeah.
I mean, his start of his season was unreal, and to be, he wasn't just stepping up; he was making plays that, established running backs would be making 2-3 years down the line. So I think, he would have walked away with it.
Maybe a shoe in for comeback player next year.
In all honesty, I mean, if Christian Watson was in from week one, I think he might have been he would have been right up in the conversation. Mm-hmm. I just think he's came too little too late type thing, for the awards type thing, but if he was in from week one and going from week one, I think he would have been right up there as well.
What about Kenneth Walker at the Seahawks? Because he's still there, choice. But he's
name I've got written down as well.
I think Kenneth Walker, and again, it's not just about. I mean, yes, he isn't the leading rusher. He isn't the leading rusher for rookies. I think that goes to Dameon Pierce.
Yes,
not right. And again, he's one that could have been considered.
He's one that's got injured.
He's on IR as well now.
He's starting to come. Is he Pierce? I thought he was coming back.
Oh no, he's on IR.
He's out. But I think in terms of it's that impact idea that I have with a lot of my picks is Walker's impact this season. I mean, I think he was always going to be projected to at some point take over the running back core at Seattle, but he got thrust in there quite quickly because of Penny's injury. Mm-hmm. And I think
he was in by week 2 or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think he really stepped up. I think at the moment he's on 9 TDs, which for a rookie running back's pretty good. I think.
Certainly more than Seattle were expecting him to get. No?
Yeah, and I think he has the most for all rookie running backs this season. Could be wrong, but I think he is. And I think Pierce, although he's the most rushing, he only has like 4 TDs.
Yeah, he's not scored much, is he? But he's got the yardage and he's got the carries. Yeah.
So I just think, Walker's impact and importance in that Seattle offense.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue, isn't it? Or that's the thing. It's the other ones, and Olave, he's not managed to elevate the Saints to a position where they're actually relevant and whatever else. Seattle put their whole game on the back of Kenneth Walker, and he literally ran them to near enough a playoff berth. I know he got injured a couple of weeks ago and he tailed off a little bit with his jammed ankle and stuff, and I'm not sure if he's still 100%. But Seattle's game was like, this guy's running with it, give him the ball. So I think he's got. I'd be tempted to say he should be the winner, but if there's another flash, and if Garrett Wilson does well, or even if Christian Watson, because he scored a few touchdowns recently, he's had that sudden spurt. If he can somehow keep that going for the next 3 or 4 weeks,
listen.
I'm saying 3 or 4 weeks. If you still get 4 weeks of game time out of him, you'll be happy.
If he scores, maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns between now and the end of the season, we scrape into the playoffs in 7th spot. Then his name has to be in there. That's but that's a stretch for that to happen at the moment.
Yeah. All right, it's Kenneth Walker then.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker for me, yeah.
Who did Johnny have, actually? Sorry, it's completely ignored what Johnny. Let's have a quick look. Johnny had Kenneth Walker, although it would have been Breece Hall. So there you go. So
yeah,
I think that's fair. I think we all agree on that one. Defensive Rookie of the Year, and if this is even a competition, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I wrote down 2 names just because I felt like I had to write down a second. But if it's not Nick Bosa, then there's something wrong in the world.
Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was Defensive Player of the Year. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
Jumping ahead of yourself. Yeah.
Still got the two names.
Still
though.
got the two.
Still got the two names, but yeah, Sauce Gardner and Aidan Hutchinson for me. I don't think there's any big shocks to the.
I think Sam's a bit surprised by the
Yeah,
second name there.
Sauce is definitely the one I've written down. He's not my choice. I can understand why people have chosen Sauce. I think he has been good. The only thing I would say with Sauce is
Good.
he's gone.
Hang on. Good.
Well, he's been very good.
He's been exceptional as a rookie quarterback.
Yeah,
the stats that he's putting up and the fact that established quarterbacks in the NFL are not throwing to him. He's that good.
Yeah,
He's although
my
he has got 3 really tough games coming up, so it will be interesting to see in the next few weeks if he continues his high level of play.
I just think that Jets defense, although he has been important to that Jets defense, don't get me wrong, that Jets defense was solid last year. And yes, he's added to them and they have been enhanced because he's there. But again, he has impacted it. But for me, one cornerback who I think has been, disregarded a lot is Tariq Woolen. Tariq Woolen for me is the fact that he has got so many interceptions for a rookie. I think he's the leading for rookie interceptions. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he has 6 this year.
6, that's what he's got. Yeah.
For a rookie quarterback on a team which is defensively
also playing five other rookies. Yeah.
I think, he's just been, I watched him against us and he was just unbelievable. So yeah, I think he is going to get overlooked. I do think Sauce is going to be the one to win it. But for me, I think Tariq Woolen would be my choice personally.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think Sauce will win it because Sauce has been also a media aspect.
Yeah, he's been a media hungry.
He's been media hungry, whereas, as you say, Tariq Woolen just got on with the job, done his job. Sauce, the cheesehead Sauce wandering around, Lambeau Field, all of that sort of stuff. People are going to remember that and remember the stats and all the stuff that's coming out. The stats don't lie, but as you say, Tariq Woolen's stats also don't lie. But he's not getting the New York buzz, and playing in New York may also be helping him because Seattle is an unfashionable team that never normally gets much of the credit and much of the the media and stuff. So I think he might be suffering from that. Whereas Sauce right in the middle of New York, right in the middle of everything, is probably going to get it. Aidan Hutchinson starting to come good. He's starting to come good. I think he's slow at the beginning.
He's absolutely my vote, and that's exactly why he's my vote as well, because that Lions defense was utter garbage at the beginning, and he was the one that, you can see them gravitating to him. When he started to get better, they started to get better.
Yeah.
And he's now taking them to a different place now where they are actually starting to look like a half decent unit.
Yeah.
And I think
as you say, in his last few games, he's either stepped through or it's all started to click. Or more likely, what's happening is starting to slow down for him now. I think because everything, as they always say as rookies, the game is so fast. I think now the game's starting to slow down for Hutchinson, and he's starting to use his technique. He's starting to use his strength. He's starting to cause pressures. He's starting to get sacks. I think the last game didn't he end up with a sack and an interception and he's kind of ticking all the boxes. And you're right, he has been the catalyst for the change in that Lions defense. They have a elite pass rusher now, and they can build around that. So.
Absolutely. Again, you can stick the caveat on that with making the playoffs, as long as they make the playoffs. But, very much, I think, he's my pick if they do make the playoffs, because I think if they do make them now, it'll be...
They'll make it because of him. Yeah.
He's stepped up massively.
Interesting. Yeah. Johnny will probably want to have a mention of Thingamajiggy. Thibodeau. He's starting to come, but I think he may have left it too little too late.
Yeah, he's a little too late. A bit like Watson, I think.
Yeah.
Unfortunate with his injury, he's not really had a full run to get up to speed. But he's, he can't be too far away. But I think he has just left it a little too late.
Yeah.
Honourable mentions for anybody else, or are we kind of thinking it's just between those top 3? But really, we all know it's top one.
Yeah, it is Gardner, but
Yeah.
it's those three, but Gardner's the one to get it, I think.
I still say Hutchison should absolutely get it, but Gardner will get it. If we're going for who will get it, I'll go for Gardner.
Yeah.
If we're going for who should get it, I'm pitching on
Hutchinson's
Hutchison.
better. Interesting, excellent, and obviously Johnny, surprise, has gone for Sauce Gardner. There you go. Right then, defensive player of the year.
Okay, reverse. Wind back 5 minutes.
Back up. Now, Micah Parsons was the early runner for this. He started off like a train. He's still in the mix, still talking about it. But
Parsons is the second name that I put down just because I had to put a second name down.
Parsons was my choice, I will say. And I don't know if there's a bit of anti-Niner bias there. So that might be why.
It wouldn't surprise me if there was, to be honest. I think I've already mentioned that in the Coach of the Year stuff, there's the Niner bias of the ex-Niners. But when you look at the stats, I think somebody put it up on Twitter or somebody put it up last week or something. There it was like between the two, how many more tackles for loss, how many more sacks, how many more QB pressures, how many more hits Bosa has got over Parsons. It's like it's not really a competition.
I think I wrote it down that Parsons. It was. I looked at three. I looked at Parsons, Bosa, and I looked at. It may even have been Matt Judon. I can't remember. Those are the three things I looked at.
Crosby.
Max Crosby wasn't there, but again, he's an honourable mention, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking at it was something like, I think, sacks. The average yards loss of a QB after being sacked by those three players, I think it was 7.9 was Bosa, and I think Parsons was 6.6, and whoever the other one was 6.9 or something like that. So the fact that he was so an extra yard ahead of all the others, it does speak. But I think if I'm going to make a case for Parsons, he has the most tackles out of all of them. It's not sacks, tackles. So 13 sacks, which I think was I think last time I looked it was 15.5 for
Bosa's got 15.5 as of last week.
But I think the biggest ones I suppose, if you're going to look at a particular stat, that's going to be why Parsons would get it. He's had 3 forced fumbles, 2 of which have been recovered, 1 of which has gone for a touchdown. And that for me is that impact there. He's actually put points on the board. I think and that's why I think why I'm leaning towards Parsons. And again, like I say, there might be a bit of Niner hate bias on it, but I just think Parsons is he's unreal.
I suppose the thing with Parsons, right? He is head and shoulders above the rest of that defense. Bosa is playing on a defense which is stacked with some top quality players. And is Bosa benefiting because he's playing with Armstead and Warner and Lee Ward and all the others, whereas Parsons has got
nobody.
Stephon Diggs at corner. You can't really think of any other name on that defense other than those two. Whereas
they're the two big. I think, like I say,
you look at the Niners, you can list 4, 5, 6, and you think, actually, that starts to make things a bit more.
It is a good unit. It's just not. There's no superstars in it. There's none that jump out. They're all just solid and do their job. And then you've got Parsons that really stands out. And
I think it's the dual element of Parsons that also makes him different. I mean, the fact that he is not only is he a linebacker, but he's also an edge rusher as well. He has that impact. And I think if we're talking about sort of the impact of players and why I that's why I've gone for Parsons. It's the impact side of it. Don't get me wrong. I think Nick Bosa has been excellent this year, but I just think Parsons' impact on the team and on that defensive line has just been almost second to none.
On the defense as a whole. I think that's the thing, isn't it? As we say, Bosa is able to just pin his ear back, go every down he's on there because he knows Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw and El Shayer are back there, and Armstead's in the middle, and Jackson and Ebukama's on the other side of the line. So all he needs to do is get down, get set, get after the quarterback. He doesn't have the other, like Parsons, as you say, he can blitz it, he can get in there, but he also needs to cover that, running back out of the flat and whatever else. So, yeah, I can see your point, but I'm not going to change my mind. That's for sure.
From my perspective, just knowing, like, obviously because Aaron Donald for me, although he never seems to.
How's he got a Pro Bowl vote?
Because he's Aaron Donald. That's why. But I think it's the reason why I lean to Parsons more than I do to Bosa is Donald himself. Like Donald throughout the years, although he does get sacks, although his impact on the game, indirectly or directly, is head and shoulders above a lot of other players. It's a bit like JJ Watt. These sort of individual sort of defensive players that, may not necessarily make the sack, may not, get the big headline sort of tackles, but it's the impact that they put on the rest of the team. Like Donald's in like pressure. The fact that he's often getting triple teamed and such, that's why I went for Parsons, because it's the overall impact. I mean, I don't know what the stats are, but it'd be interesting to see what the pressures are comparatively across those sort of top players.
You've literally got quarterbacks that will go away from them as well. They'll turn the other way when they see, they'll go on the other side. So that impacts in itself as well. But yeah, I mean, for me, a team that can go 4 quarters without conceding a single, 4 halves without conceding a single point, the defensive player of the year has to come off that team for me. Yeah. And Bosa has, as you say, guys, stacked, but Bosa has been head and shoulders.
He's been the number one player on that defense. He's allowed everyone else. Everyone else is, able to do what they do because they know he's also out there doing it. So it's complementary. And as you say, the number one defense probably has to have the number one defensive player of the year on there.
Yeah.
And Johnny agrees. Oddly enough. Offensive player of the year. Now, usually, and I hate this, but usually the MVP ends up coming from the offense and usually ends up doubling up on this one.
Well, that's why I've not went for a quarterback in this one.
Yeah, me either.
There's only one player for me that I think can justify getting this. That's a bold statement, I know, but it's He does.
Number 11?
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be. You got to look at game-changing receivers, right? I mean, if anything else, I mean, Christian McCaffrey could have possibly gone in there as well as a comeback player of the year, but as an offensive player of the year, and I just don't think he's had the full season at one place.
I think if McCaffrey was at the 49ers for the whole season, yeah, I would say maybe, but it just didn't. It was the best at Carolina, but it was a bad team.
But it was Carolina, yeah, exactly. Tyreek Hill, he's got to be in there because he's in with a shout with breaking the record. He's making chunk plays. He's lifted that Miami team. He's proven that it wasn't just Patrick Mahomes, if you like. He has added, an elevated Tua to an MVP discussion, which we'll get to. But Tyreek Hill's got to be in there. But I think we're all favouring JJ, right? He almost single-handedly took that game over, and he's consistently had 100-yard plus games, hasn't he? He's just
he's 1,600 yards for the season so far, 7 touchdowns. That catch he made. You'd think he'd have more touchdowns.
Yeah, when you look at the stats, it's only 7.
But if I remember,
he's had some bad games. He's had some bad games. He's had some very quiet games.
But then I think Tyreek Hill has the exact same number of touchdowns as he does.
Really? Yeah.
I think he only has 7 as well.
Because I guess they've shared them around with Waddle and Hill, haven't they?
But he has, I think, just under 100 yards receiving than Jefferson, from when I remember looking. So, and then obviously after that, it's like there's like
miles away.
So,
yes, yeah.
I just think, Jefferson, that catch that Jefferson made, single-handed, like
it was fighting it off of the DB and stuff. It's just
he's just He is.
What gets
He's
me
just
about
next level.
Jefferson, he is next level, and everybody knows the Vikings are going to Jefferson. It's like that stage, right? They're going to throw the ball to JJ. There's nobody else they're throwing. Thielen, come on.
Yeah, and
But
Kirk
he's
Cousins
still
isn't a good enough quarterback to hide it either. You know, like kind of Matt Stafford is when everyone knows he's going to cut, but he's got the look away
he's
throw.
still got the look away. Yeah, exactly.
Kirk Cousins hasn't got that. They know he's going to Jefferson, and he's looking at Jefferson too.
I'm going over there, and everyone knows he's going over there. And Jefferson still, as you say, goes up and gets it one-handed, or still gets up, and makes the catch, gets open, does whatever he does.
That movement he did on, what game was it? You know, the little jukey that he did.
Just
where he
left the defense.
Who was it? It was a very experienced cornerback.
Wasn't. You know, I almost want to say it's Ramsey, but it wasn't.
No, it was a Patriots?
Was it McCourty?
It's going to bug me who it was. He did that double juke on him, and you just think like this was an experienced cornerback, and he just made him look like a rookie.
Yeah, absolutely. Just almost put him on his backside, didn't he? Yeah. It was just, I mean, I think as I say, he should get it, and it's probably one of those awards that will go under the radar.
For me, Barkley should get it. Saquon Barkley has put the New York Giants on his back and carried them with a, let's face it, pretty crap quarterback.
And no receivers.
No receivers. And he has chucked the New York Giants in the cauldron of New York. You know, it's not an easy thing to do. And
as you say, after a couple of years in the wilderness and injured,
he has chucked that team on his back. Maybe a caveat of making the playoffs, but I think Barkley's should be up there with a shout. Also think Josh Jacobs deserves an honourable mention. He's a leading running back. He is so underrated, it's untrue. You know, he wasn't even expected to start this year.
People expected Zamir White to have been number one running back by now, wouldn't they? Because Jacobs isn't getting his next year and whatever.
1,400 rushing yards, leading rusher of the season, and on a very bad team as well, you know, on a very poor team as well. So it's
in a contract year where he's put himself in the shop window. I mean, some teams are good. Somebody's going to give him a lot of money next year.
Does Jamal Williams get an honourable mention for his
just because his sheer numbers of
TDs that he seems to?
Hang on, he's only rushed for 300 yards though, hasn't he?
Yeah, but he's got like
but he's 15
touchdowns, 15 touchdowns, and his maximum yardage has been 3 yards or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's certainly scoring, but then you could say the same, I suppose, Monson Bra. He's been a revelation. Well, I'm not sure a revelation, but it's a continuation of the good end of last season. He's
been important, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been important for that team. When he wasn't playing, they did sort of struggle without him. So again, that's where, as you, maybe you're right. You know, that's maybe more of a feather in Saquon's cap. That, you know, if Saquon wasn't at the Giants and wasn't playing as well as he is, where would the Giants be? You know, they certainly wouldn't be. They wouldn't be knocking at the door of a playoff, I should imagine.
I suppose the one thing you would say is the last few weeks Saquon hasn't been playing well, and then irrespectively the Giants haven't been playing well. So I suppose you could. There is certainly an argument for him.
He did bounce back in Washington on Sunday at the weekend. You know, it's
especially a big game against Washington in the division, and showed up. Interesting that nobody's mentioned any of the Philly receivers.
Yeah, well, I was just about
AJ Brown has
to get a mention.
Because he's
just
been connected.
AJ Brown, you know, he's turned it. He's been a big integral part. Big signing, brave signing for them.
A lot of money signing, big signing to go in there with. You know, look at all the other receivers who got big money signings over the summer. None of them have really kind of grabbed the team that they've gone to by the scruff of the neck, have they? You know, McLaurin at Washington. Yeah.
I've got a bit of a left field one. It's just come to mind. And it's only because I remember watching him that I saw this stat. Travis Kelce.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
He's. I mean, obviously, we know how important he is to the Chiefs, and his connection with Mahomes is just unreal. But I think I remember seeing a stat that he's got to a certain number of either yards or TDs or something. It was some stat, but he'd done it in something like 30
half
less
the time
games
the
than
last time or
anyone
something.
else, and you
Yeah.
just think the importance of him to that offense. He
Man.
is a wide receiver, like
Yeah.
He's just a very big wide receiver.
yeah.
And the difference that he makes from that position, you know, I mean, he is far and away the most impactful tight end in the league this season, far and away. You know,
Miles
so that
away.
has to count
I
for
wouldn't say he's the
something.
best tight end, but he's the most impactful tight end because he's used in the most impactful way. He's not used like a tight end of blocking and all that sort of stuff. He's kind of in there, and you know he's just going to get past it. He's in there for passing first rather than what other tight ends are doing. So yeah, it's probably a good shout.
Yeah, fair shout.
Who did Johnny go for?
Place your bets. Place your bets. Who did Johnny go for?
Jefferson.
Jefferson.
Yeah, JJ.
There we go.
There we go. So the big one.
I think I'm losing this battle then, and it's going to JJ, isn't it? I'm still saying Saquon, no.
I like your options, but I think JJ with the yards, with the season he's had, he's got to be in there, even on an 11-3 fraudulent team.
Well, much like Sam was with Bosa. I mean, I might be a little bit kind of anti-Viking with my vote, but I'm sticking with Barkley.
I'll take the Partsons. You take the Barkley L.
Right, MVP. Who have you got?
There are only really two options for me, and it's how can you not be? You know, it's got to be Mahomes and Hurts. You know, can you talk about anyone else?
No, I can't think so. And my concern is Hurts is now maybe out for a week or two. Will, like we've mentioned with others, will that impact his MVP?
That's why I've got Mahomes at 1 and Hurts at 2.
Yeah. See, I've gone Mahomes, and that's only because I mean, there are elements that you could say that he's had more chances to be able to shine and stuff like that because of the fact that their defense isn't as strong as the Eagles' defense. But Mahomes has put up over 4,500 yards this year, and he's got the most touchdowns. He's got 35 touchdowns. He is just the best quarterback in the league, and he's proving it this year.
And when you're watching,
he's proven it with a completely new wide receiver core as well. I know he's still got Kelsey there, you know, but his wide receiver core got absolutely decimated and rebuilt.
Got nobody there, you know. Yeah, he's not got Hill. He's not got. It's true, as you say, he's still got Kelsey, he's still got the security blanket, and it's a pretty damn good one, as you just mentioned, Sam. But yeah, I mean, it's just watching. You watch Kansas City to watch Patrick Mahomes do those crazy spin moves and those jump passes and those little shovels and the sort of alley-oop pass, or was it? And then kind of layup pass he did a couple of weeks ago. It was like, I'll just sort of toss it to you. That and it was like everyone's like, what was that? It was Mahomes passing it forward to McKinnon. It was like
he wasn't. He's going for 80 yards.
He's also making players who wouldn't necessarily be seen as good players. He's making them better. I mean, no one at any point would have thought that Jerick McKinnon would have been as good as he has been this year. He's a good
did for years.
But he's all of a sudden like he's making ridiculous plays with Mahomes there, and that's in the passing game. It's not necessarily just in the rushing.
Right. Yeah, Shanahan. Yeah, I mean, he was always the one that Shanahan had him on our books for 3 years. Couldn't get him fit. Couldn't get a quarterback to match with him. He went to the Jets, and then suddenly we're all like, that's maybe what Shanahan saw and just didn't have the round him. But yeah, you're right. And just say, Craig, his receivers, who's he got? Valdez, Scanlon,
Smith-Schuster. I mean, he's actually made Smith-Schuster look like his rookie year. You know, when his rookie year in Pittsburgh, he looked great, and then he just fell off an absolute cliff. And he's managed to make him look like that again, which is impressive.
He's also done well with Mecole Hardman. I mean, I know he didn't really have a great season last year, but he's had a better season when fit this season.
When fit this year, yeah, absolutely. He's brought Sky Moore in. He's given the rookies flashes. Yeah.
Even managed to get Tony a touchdown, for goodness sake. If that's not worth the trophy for itself,
But then again, I suppose, can somebody else? I mean, it's difficult. You wouldn't say that you could plug a different player in if Mahomes was injured, and the Chiefs would still win. But you look at the Eagles, and on the other side of that, if Hurts, now Hurts has gone down, will the Eagles be the same team without him? I think so.
I think it is worth obviously talking about Hurts because he has been. I mean, he he was shaky last year. There were parts of his game where he was fantastic, but there were also parts of his game where he was utterly dreadful. And some of the interceptions he was throwing were just bad. But this year he's been extremely impactful. Whether that's
taken a massive step forward.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that arguably he's been gifted a top 5 wide receiver in AJ Brown. You know, he has the weapons around him that, you know, maybe other quarterbacks don't. But he's not only has he worked on his own game in terms of his throwing ability and his, you know, he's also impacting the game on the ground as well. Like, you talk about when you talk about Jalen Hurts, you talk about his rushing ability as well as his throwing ability. And he's, you know, I think he contributes something like 10 or so touchdowns on the ground or something even more than that. So, you know, he's having a direct impact on that Eagles offense in terms of putting up points.
I mean, everyone knew that Hurts could run, you know, before this season started. Everyone knew he could run and he was a danger on the ground. The trouble was that he couldn't throw very well. You know, that was the shaky part of it. But he has stepped up this year absolutely massively in that department. And yes, he's got the weapons, but he has proven that he can stand in there and do the passes as well. And I think that's massive for him.
And, you know, that's maybe a nod that the front office at Philly saw the rushing, saw the fact he can throw a deep bomb and thought, hang on, the reason he's causing some of these passes, some of the dodgy throws he's doing is because he's not just airing it out. Let's go out there and get him the number one, you know, elite wide receiver who can stretch the field and go long for him. And if he has to put it up in the air, you know, he can really lean into AJ's yards down the field with another guy before only 15 20, maybe. But he, you know, has come on leaps and bounds. They are the top team at the moment in the NFL. He's got to be in the mix for the decision and the discussion. Depends on. It's interesting. Him being injured have a negative impact on his, you know, voting and whether or not he gets in. But it may also strengthen it if Gardner Minshew comes in and the Eagles just don't look the same. And highlights how
if the Eagles lose to the Cowboys, which obviously it's an important match.
It's not beyond the belt. Yeah.
You know, if Minshew comes in and they don't win that match, you'll be looking at, you know, Hurts and saying, if Hurts had been in there, would they have won that match?
Yeah.
There is a higher chance that they probably wouldn't. So I think if you're going to make arguments for Hurts, I think it'll, like I say, it probably will depend on on Sunday's game or whenever it is.
Sunday, Monday, Saturday. I can't keep up with it. But this week's a mad week, and the games are all over the place, isn't it?
So I think,
I think that will be interesting to see what pulls. You know, if Minshew comes in, plugs in, and you know the offense purrs, and they hand the ball to Sanders, and you know he throws a couple of passes to AJ, and they win, then it might, you know, as you say, detrimentally, you know, affect Hurts's MVP, you know, credentials, because it's like, well, it's more the team, it's not actually you. But if it's the other way, then it's like, well, that's how important he is to that number one team in the NFL. Therefore, if you're that important to that team and you're the best team statistically wise with the best record in the NFL, it kind of makes sense that you're the MVP. But the likelihood is it'll go to Mahomes.
Well, I mean, yeah, probably. But I mean, one out of left field as well. I mean, again, depending on how the season finishes, this one would have to be. But so, you know, if Eagles fall off with Minshew in there, lose the number one seed, Cowboys maybe lose a game or two along the way, the Niners drop a game, the Vikings win out, they get the number one seed. Can you really look at Kirk Cousins?
I think if you're going to be giving an MVP, it's going to go to Jefferson. Like, I don't think you can give it to Cousins.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing, Sam. The MVP does not go to a wide receiver; it goes to a quarterback.
It goes to a quarterback,
So inevitably, you know, if you look at if the Vikings go and get the number one seed in the NFC, which is, you know, it's not beyond the realms. The way their seasons went this year, let's face it, everything's fallen for
them. They're winning so many games by the odd points and the odd score, aren't they? They're like unbelievable. I mean, there's another left field one for Rookie of the Year. If the 49ers win out, take the second seed.
Get
the second seed.
This Purdy party needs to stop.
It really needs.
I thought I was going to be the most ridiculous tonight with Kirk Cousins, right? But you've just taught me, Gary. Well
I'm about to
done.
come in there. Anything that beats Kirk Cousins, I've got to get rid of Kirk Cousins off of it. I mean, even so,
I don't get me wrong. What he's come in and he's played well, but he's played in a system which is quite friendly for a quarterback of his, who is a rookie quarterback. So I think for people
it's been the bigger advert for Kyle Shanahan's offense than it has for Brock Purdy as a elite QB.
I reckon you could throw any half decent QB into that lineup and they'd probably do all right. I mean, they're making Jimmy G look really good. So.
And it's the defense that's behind them as well. The offense can go out there and you can go out and you can afford to go for it. He has the freedom of, right, do you know what? See if I do throw up an interception here, defense will probably stop them anyway, So
3 and out anyway, right? Yeah.
That gives you a bit of freedom to go for it, which is always sound because you're going to make those throws sometimes,
I mean, it's been history making with Brock. You can't, he's the first Mr. Irrelevant to actually throw a pass, throw a touchdown, win a game, and then everything he does is like the first that he've ever done it. But I was being like firmly tongue in cheek with that one. I mean, that was like even I couldn't, with my rose tinted glasses on, even possibly suggest that. But there you go.
Right, you did.
Maybe I could actually. I know, and if we got to the NFC Championship game, maybe I'd be banging a drum for it. But yeah,
who was Johnny's MVP then? I'm going to assume it was probably Hurts.
I think it'd be more. What was it? Hurts, was it?
It wasn't Jalen Hurts. Yeah. So are we going Mahomes or Hurts?
I personally go Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, I just think he is Kansas City now, and I think that's a big thing. If Kansas City are going well, then Mahomes is always going to be in the conversation.
Yeah,
I think
and Kansas City go well because Mahomes is there.
That's exactly it.
It's not if the team are going well; it's if he goes well, the team's going well, and therefore it's.
It's just the way he does it. It is very Rodgers-esque, and he makes average receivers look very, very good.
I think as well, I wouldn't be upset if either of them got it. Both of them are at MVP level in terms of their season. So
yeah,
I think if anyone other than those two got it, I'd be very, very surprised.
That would be the question marks.
Agreed.
Right, let's run them back then. So we're going to talk Coach of the Year. We're saying Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
Game of the Year, Vikings, Colts.
Yeah.
Comeback Player of the Year, Christian McCaffrey. Offensive Rookie Player of the Year, Kenneth Walker. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Aiden Hunter. Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner. We know Sauce Gardner will get it. We're not whether or not he should get it is different matters altogether. Defensive Player of the Year.
Nick Bosa.
Yeah, well done, Sam. Nick Bosa.
Micah Parsons.
Micah Bosa. Nick Bosa. And then Offensive Player of the Year, Justin Jefferson.
Barkley.
Not letting it go. It was JJ. And then finally, MVP.
Mahomes. If Hurts gets it.
Wouldn't be too onset if Hurts walks away with that. There you go, folks. That has been a festive roundup of the award season from football from across the pond. I wish everybody who's tuned in, listened, watched, whatever you do, please hit the like buttons down there wherever they are and do all the subscribey stuff. Thanks for tuning into Variety Sports Network and wish everybody a very happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.